October 4th, 2006. My name is Rosalind Benjet for the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. I'm here with Sherry Roost, who's taking notes, and Debbie Saya, who is our videographer, and we're here to talk with Howard Schultz today. Howard, tell me about your family.
Well, my family, actually, grandparents were born in Europe, and on both sides they came to the States probably at the turn of the century or something like that. And both parents were born in the States. And I was born in Jersey City, New Jersey, and then our family moved some years later to Paterson, New Jersey, where I spent most of the next years all the way through high school until I left for college.
Okay. And what did your parents do for a living?
Well, my father contracted a virus at a very special age. It was around the Depression time when I was born. And my only recollection of him is that he was ill and not able to work. And so my mother was the chief supporter of the family.
And what did she do?
Well, she worked in retail and tried to make sure she kept the family going, my sister and myself.
Mm-hmm. And your sister is older or younger?
She's younger. She's 3 years younger than I am. And they live in Birmingham, Alabama.
And when you were a child, where did you live in a large city? You lived in Paterson. Was it what kind of?
Lived in
Paterson
in a two-family house, and in a very nice setting. I never realized or ever thought of myself as being poor, because all of us were poor during the Depression. And so nobody was disadvantaged. And I have good memories of early childhood, including the usual things of stoop ball and stick ball and playing in the streets and things like that. And then of course the war, for the Second World War came, and that influenced so many of our lives.
Did your family attend the synagogue?
Actually, because my father was ill and he was not observant, I attended synagogue through 2 bar mitzvah, and that was it. My mother made sure that I went to Cheder and after school, and that I did get bar mitzvah.
And what was the congregation like at that time?
That actually is it's a congregation that's still very vibrant today. It's a conservative congregation in Paterson, New Jersey.
Did your family celebrate Jewish holidays?
Well, my recollection is that we celebrated the major ones. We didn't celebrate any of the other. Although in Hebrew school I can remember being involved with the celebrations as well. So probably we did a lot of it at the school and among friends, because there was a significant Jewish population there. In fact, our public school closed for the Jewish holidays, which is quite unusual. You don't hear those things in Texas.
But I came from Pennsylvania and they did. Tell me about your education.
Well, I went to a high school in Dallas, in Paterson, and graduated from there in 1945, actually in January 1945, and that is still wartime. And I was accepted to Cornell University in the engineering college, and that was to start in February, so this is midterm. But the way colleges were working at wartime, they had accelerated programs, so you would have three semesters in a year, And so I started in February 1945 at Cornell University, and went year-round, and actually stayed through the summer of the next year, 1946.
Mhm.
At that point, I knew that I was going to need some finances in order to continue my college. The GI Bill was still out there for those of us who would enlist, and so I enlisted in the Army in 1946.
Mhm.
And having enlisted in the Army, I was then pushed into the Air Force, because that was before they were separate services. And I then served from 1946 to 1948, and I got out in March of 1948. And then went back to Cornell. Part of why I went in was because I wasn't sure what I ever wanted to do with my life. I didn't like engineering, both chemical and civil. I tried civil engineering. And when I came back, I went into the liberal arts college, and I had mathematics as a major. And then when I realized I wasn't going to be a theoretical mathematician and a teacher, I took economics as the other component of a double major, and graduated with a BA in 1950.
Mhm. Let's go back to being a teenager in Patterson. Did you belong to any kind of, were you active in sports or any other activities in school, or Jewish youth groups, or?
Well, yes, all of the youth groups were Jewish, because most of the people, all my friends were Jewish. And I can remember fondly groups, they were called the Cherokees, or whatever they were called, and the YMHA was a big thing in our lives. And then, of course, the usual sports, and most of which took place in the streets or in the parks. But yes, that was, but it was not a major thrust of my life. Probably the most significant thing that happened is that I found out that I liked music, and music was big among our group. And during that particular time, big bands were very prominent. And so for the last several years in high school, I was part of a big band. And that was a very wonderful time in my life. I enjoyed the music, and I enjoyed the camaraderie, and it was a very healthy thing to do as well. And it was something that followed me, and I stayed with for years and years and years through to service. When I went to the service, I was put into the 529th Air Force Band in Denver, Colorado, and played in the military band for the time that I was in service.
What instrument?
I started out with clarinet, then went to saxophone, and in the bands I used to play sax and clarinet, and sax primarily and clarinet occasionally. But these were the days of Harry James and Benny Goodman and Artie Shaw, all those prominent bands, and it was fun, it was exciting, and the big band sound was just wonderful, it was thrilling.
Mm-hmm.
I still sometimes look and think that maybe I'll go back and take it up again, particularly when I get around to some of the functions here and meet some of the people who are involved in playing, like Mark Creditor, and who's out there playing, and others.
Mm-hmm.
I've threatened him that I'm going to go play with him one of these days. I still have it up on the shelf, but it's just one of the things that I determined that I was going to do after I retired and sold my business, that I was going to do a number of things. I haven't gotten to that one yet.
But then you were actually a musician all through service?
All through service, and then on to college. I worked my way through college, supplementing the GI Bill, playing in bands weekends and the like, and enjoying it thoroughly.
Mm-hmm. And what happened after college? What did you decide to
Oh,
do?
after college I got lost in the world, because most of the people that I was in school with in 1950 were engineers, and they had offers of employment right after they graduated. Either that or they were pre-med students that were out of med school. So I was one of the few people that was able to stay in liberal arts, and one of the few people that didn't have a job when I got out of college. And I searched and searched and searched, and finally made a connection through a Cornell alum, and ended up on Wall Street in 1950, just prior to Korea. So my timing through life, beginning with that, was absolutely fortuitous, because I had just finished my service, finished my college, and if I hadn't done that, I would have been the first up to serve in Korea. But of course that changed the complexion of things in the United States too as well. It affected employment. But I started at Wall Street and worked there for a year while I tried to find myself comfortable. I really didn't feel comfortable there. I took a job in the mathematical field, mathematical statistics, working there on stocks and bonds and the like. But I found that much too confining. I really wasn't very happy with that. I began to look for work, and then I had the opportunity to apply for a job with Allied Stores, a major retailer, and I went on their training program, in their controller training program, and that was a year later, 1951.
Mm-hmm. And after that?
And I went through that program. It was very satisfying to me. I found retailing something that I really liked. Although that was the first time that I ever became aware of the fact that most every retailer that I knew worked 6 days a week. And so I found myself working 6 days a week. And it wasn't until many years later when I got out of retailing because I really thought everybody worked 6 days a week. And but in retailing, you do work 6 days a week, and we certainly did. And part of the lure of joining Allied Stores was the fact that they had stores all over the country. And by then I was tired as I could be of commuting from Paterson, New Jersey to New York to Wall Street. I tried every which way to get there. I tried going on the ferry, and I tried going on the train, tried driving the car halfway, tried driving the car all the way, a bus hanging on a strap, and none of that really suited me. I thought, I've just got to find out whether life is better away from New York. And with Allied Stores, I had that opportunity because as part of the training program, I was going to be in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I was going to be in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I was going to be in Cleveland, Ohio, and so I enjoyed that. And I was with them for some 13 years, from 1951 to 1964.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point in time, things went awry. Let's just see. At that point in time, I had met Leslie, met her in 1962.
And how did you meet?
We were in Kansas City. That's where I met her. And this was the beginning of the move on the part of Allied to get into this discount world. And I became their first controller of a discount store, but it happened to be officed in New York. So we ended up back in New York. And at that point, we had some business reversals, and I thought, this is going to be better for me to get out of this and into something else. And it was 1966, but by that time we had moved within Allied from New York to Minneapolis, where we spent a year. I was in general management at the time. I actually worked in St. Paul. And then in '66, there was the opportunity to come to Dallas. And I think I have the right years now in thinking this through. But that's the chronology was that I went in that order. I think that we might have been here a little earlier than 1966, but anyway, then the new life started here in Dallas at that point, mid-60s, let's put it that way.
Okay. How did you meet your wife?
Blind date.
Mm-hmm.
Met Leslie through the good efforts of my mother, who had moved with me to Minneapolis, to Kansas City, and at that point in time, she happened to meet Leslie's older sister, and she was always looking out for my behalf, and said she had a son, was of eligible age, and upon questioning, Leslie's sister said, well, I think I'm a little bit too old for your son, but I do have a younger sister. And she offered Leslie's number to me. And so at that point, I put that number in my wallet, and then it must be weeks later before I found it and said, I think I'll call her up. And so I did, and we met on February 9th, which was the day before my birthday. I happened to see her with another date on February 10th, which was my birthday, and she was attending a surprise party for me because some people, mutual friends, knew each other, and so there I bumped into Leslie again, and then I saw her on February 11th, and it wasn't but just a few months before we got married. Yeah, there was no question in my mind that this was the love of my life. And so we got married on July 1. Met her on February 9th, married July 1.
Fast courtship.
1966.
And when you came to Dallas, what were your impressions of the city when you first came?
I was excited about coming to Dallas. I had heard good things about it. I think it, whatever negatives there had been in connection with the Kennedy thing wasn't a factor in any of our decisions. It didn't affect our lives. I look forward to coming to Dallas. It was just something very exciting. I had been in a number of cities by that time through Allied stores and the like. And so there was no hesitation, no apprehension about coming here. I was coming to work for a drug concern in retail, a skilled drug company.